So what I'm going to do is, Darrin, that's a really great soundbite, and I don't want to lose it. So I'm going to prompt it as asking if you have any closing comments you want. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm just going to get quiet for a second. No need to respond. I'll just move my question to the beginning of it and just let it, and it'll flow.
I thought you were going
there.
to make him say it all over again. I was like, oh
Yeah,
my.
yeah, no, I got a script. I'm going to hand it back. No, that's the beauty of
Yeah, I've
technology. I
got the
can,
script that David and Kenny gave me too. So
yeah, no, it's already been approved. We're good.
yeah,
But
you
yeah, so
almost
I'll
said
just,
that.
yeah, I'm gonna send the soundbite to him. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Labored Thoughts podcast. For those of you that are listening in, you have no idea who's here with me today, but those of you that are watching the video, you'll see either some familiar faces or some unfamiliar faces, but by the end of this, you're going to know who they are very well and know the important work they do for our industry. So why don't we go ahead and just jump right in here, and I'm going to let these two introduce themselves. We'll start with the gentleman in the very great red polo there.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate the opportunity to be on this morning and talk to the folks out there as far as what we're doing with the NEBF. And I've got Loughran here with me. She'll do her own introduction, but I think there's probably a few people that may know me and a few people that don't know me. But I am the Executive Secretary Treasurer of the fund. I started here in August of 2022, so I got a little over 2 years under my belt as the EST. And prior to that, I came from the IBEW, where I was the Chief of Staff. I worked at the IBEW International Office for almost 11 years in various capacities. I started in the CIR department as an international rep, and then kind of worked my way through different jobs at the international office, and then ultimately ended my career with the IBEW before I came over here as the Chief of Staff. So working with the international officers, traveling with the international officers. I've always done a lot with the funds because I worked with then Secretary Treasurer Ken Cooper, supporting him in an administrative assistance role. And so that's where I really got exposure to all the national funds. And then prior to that, I think I have somewhat of the traditional lineage for the international reps position. I was a business manager in a local union out in northern Illinois, Rockford, Illinois, about 90 miles due west of Chicago in the IBEW 6th District. Prior to that position, I was an organizer. I started as an organizer way back in 2002. So that might give you a sense for how long I've been in the office. I was on all the trust funds. I was a JHEC instructor for about 8 years, and foreman, general foreman, steward in the field. So I've got kind of that traditional lineage. But then one of the things that I think is very helpful, especially in some of the roles that I've held, is, along the lines, I've always been a big believer in higher education. So while I was going through apprenticeship, I stayed in community college because it was paid for. I'm a veteran, so it was paid for by the GI Bill. So I stayed in that role and ultimately got my bachelor's degree in business administration. And I thought it would be useful. In fact, back then, I think I thought I was going to be a project manager or more for an electrical contractor, but things happen over the course of your career and you go in a certain direction, and so I went to work inside at the local union office. But then once I did that, I had a very supportive business manager who allowed me to pursue my education in the evenings, and I got an MPA, which is helpful because that, it's similar to an MBA except for it's focused more on nonprofits, which is, largely what we are. So provide me a lot of background for financial analysis and program management and that kind of thing. So you don't really realize it at the time where it's going to take you, but at the end of the day, I landed here at the NEBF.
But that's what I'm really glad you kind of walked through that, Darrin, because that is one of the really cool things in our industry is it doesn't really matter where you come in, whether you're brand new, you start as a first year apprentice, you come through, the NECA route like I did as a staff associate, but however you make your way into the industry, legitimately the possibilities are endless. Loughran, how is the industry, or how did you find your way here? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Good morning. My intro will be significantly shorter than Darrin's, but I'm Loughran. I'm the managing director for the NEBF, NEAP, and NEFP. I began with the funds a little over 11 years ago in 2013 as the employer services director, and then I moved over to become the pension director until my current role, which Darrin placed me in about 2 years ago. I have a background in my degrees in business administration with a concentration in management as well. And prior to that, I specialized in managing teams, managing call centers, and things like that. So it's been an amazing 11 years, and honored to be here and happy to serve the funds.
Awesome. As somebody who worked a few years in a call center, I have a lot of respect for what you do and managing and keeping everybody in check. That's a tall order.
It's a big part of our operation, right? And Loughran keeps the trains running on time and does a lot of the day-to-day management with the staff, and she does an outstanding job. And I think her role, she's a humble person, but she's definitely a very significant player here at the NEBF and cares deeply for their participants. So I think that is at the heart and soul of, her success with the funds is, how much she cares about the participants.
Well, I know we have a kind of a list of items we're going to work our way through, but before we jump in, it might be helpful for those listening and watching to kind of understand, how you guys do help the participants on a daily basis. So I mentioned the call center just a bit there. How many sites do you have, and roughly how many people do you have available to help with, participants calling in, whether it be a pension or a healthcare issue?
Sure. Yeah, I can give you the overview, and then I'll turn it over to Loughran to kind of talk to you about the various departments and roles that we have within the walls of the NEBF. So we have two physical operations that we maintain. Our legacy operation, which was the NEBF and NEAP, is here in Rockville, Maryland. We have about 100 employees, give or take a couple. We have about 100 employees here. And then our FMCP operation, which again is a physical operation, is in Rossville, Georgia, which is just over the border, just outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee. And we have a little over 50 employees there. So if you take a look at the totality of the operations and, the volume of transactions and dollars that we administer on a daily basis, we are a small but mighty staff. We do a considerable amount. Plus, as you noted, we handle all the interactions with the participants in terms of benefits administration. So we have a call center here, that we maintain, and then we also have a call center in Georgia that we maintain for the FMCP operation. So I'm going to let Loughran, because she's the expert on the overall departments and operations, but I'll let her break that down for you.
Sure.
Yeah.
So here in Rockville, we have an organizational services department who handles all of the incoming and outgoing mail, all of our compliance mailings, our day-to-day letters, incoming applications. They handle everything there. Our call center, we have 11 individuals that handle anywhere between 600 and 900 phone calls a day. They all come to work every day with offering that premier participant experience in mind. Our participants are the reason we do everything that we do, and every individual knows that, especially our call center, because they are at the forefront. But our call wait times are actually under a minute. They're almost non-existent. We actually have a processing department that backs up our call center so that if there is a high call volume that day, we can put extra folks on the phones so that our participants don't have to wait. So we have a processing department, as I mentioned, that processes all incoming applications. And then we have another department that handles our benefit recipients, any changes that they have to make with their pension or tax withholding or direct deposits. And of course, we have our accounting department that handles incoming contributions, our employer services department that handles processing all of our payroll reports. And last but not least, of course, our IT department, who is, I know we're going to speak about a little bit later today in terms of cybersecurity and things like that.
One of the changes too that I might note, Brian, is our accounting department. We also handle audits and compliance, which is a change that I made over the last couple of years, and it seems like it's playing out quite well. We have a CPA who is our controller over all of our accounting operations. And then, of course, we have numerous firms that we work with, on our audit side, and as probably some of your listeners will, understand, we do a lot of piggyback audits. So the volume of audits for a fund this size is considerable. So we need an entire department that's dedicated to that. And as Loughran kind of alluded to, I mean, we want to deliver the premier participant experience across all departments. And that's something that, we've focused on. I think, almost immediately, I convened what I refer to as my executive management team. It's all the executive leadership for all the departments. And, we talked about, what our goals were. And, we came up with this concept of delivering the premier participant experience. And customer service is at the center of that. And we want everyone to have a positive experience, and all of our goals, as Loughran alluded to, as far as the phones and emails, and they're all focused around that premier participant experience, even to the point to where we've socialized amongst our employees kind of a commitment and some organizational pillars that we refer to and we talk about in our offices of delivering that premier participant experience. And there's four of them. It's honesty, respect, sincerity, and service. If you think about it as a participant yourself and myself, that's what I want on the other end of the phone or the other end of that email. I want those four pillars. I want somebody that's there to help me with my questions and answer them, accurately and efficiently. And that's what our executive management team, we're all committed to that. And all of our employees are as well. I mean, we're proud of our staff.
Well, definitely, as you should be. I can't really speak from experience on the NEBF side because I've got a few more years to go before I'm going to be attempting to access that. I have, as a participant, called in. I don't even think the phone really rang. Somebody picked up and started talking to one of the individuals in the call center, told them what was going on. They listened for a few seconds and they said, "Can you just hand your cell phone to the person at the hospital?" And I said, "Yeah." Handed it over. Within 5 minutes, person handed it back to me and she said, "You're good." And what it was is the person in your office knew what they were coding incorrectly, knew it so well, even knew their system somehow, told them what they needed to do. They did it and it worked. So it was, just, I'm sure there are a lot of stories like that. But just an example that you guys are doing a great job. And so are the folks that work in your call centers there.
Yeah. Well, it makes it easy. It makes it easy to go to work when you have folks that are dedicated. And that I've never heard that story from you. That's great to hear. I appreciate you sharing that.
How about we start jumping in here because you guys have been a little busy. You got a few things going on, and let's just kind of dive in here. This kind of hurts my soul a little bit, being someone who grew up in a paper town, paper mill being the lifeblood of my city. But don't worry, it's not the type of paper you guys are looking to reduce. They actually produce for cardboard boxes, so I think as long as Amazon's still a thing, they'll still be pushing paper out of there. But there appears to be a paperless initiative coming from the NEBF, NEAP, and from the various funds. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what motivated that, how it's going, and I guess dive into a little bit of like what it is, what it means to not only the participants but to the contributing employers and everybody that would be involved?
Sure, I can give you the kind of the high level, decision tree, and this started, a long time before I even got here was this push for paperless. But at the end of the day, I think in my mind, the words of our CIO kind of resonate with me, and he says, if it lives electronically, it should be transmitted and stored electronically. And, I think in today's day and age, it's 2024, right? If you're still, submitting reports in paper, we're the electrical industry. We represent, technology across the country, or actually two countries, the United States and Canada. So we should be at the forefront and at the cutting edge. And I'm happy to say that, we're above 90% in terms of our paperless initiatives. We feel very strongly, and that's part of our overall, ethos. Now, I'm not going to say that we don't have printers. We do. I'm not going to say that we don't have recycling bins, because we do. We've got mail, as Loughran indicated.
Mm-hmm.
We get mail every single day. But our goal is to make sure that all of the interactions, the main business interactions that you would have with the NEBF, at least right now, occur electronically. And then we're pushing to, sometime in, I would say, the very near future, that it's going to be mostly electronically, including getting online and interacting with our benefits portal. Electronic submissions. We are, at least in concept, we're talking about, an electronic pension application, which, as you probably know, there's been some legal implications with that and wet signatures and that kind of thing. But as technology and the law continues to evolve, we'll be there to meet that. So individually, I can, Loughran can probably speak to that. Different things that we're doing in the departments.
In terms of paperless, when Darrin joined us, we just re-engaged that push, and since the end of early 2023, just from the employer reporting standpoint, we've decreased 43,000 lines of detail. So, we're, again, as he said, we're over 91% electronic in terms of detail. So our processes are able to focus on problem solving and closing out, boards rather than, hand keying that electronic data. At every phone call, if someone requests something like a simple status or a pension verification letter, our call center will offer the ability for them to generate it in a moment on the portal. If they don't want to, that's okay. We'll send it to you on paper, but it's just become a part of our everyday, trying to get that push for electronic delivery and also for incoming data electronically as well.
Well, and I'm sure not only does that trend towards less mistakes, because you mentioned if it comes in on paper, somebody's got to key that in.
Yep.
And we're all human here. You can easily hit 4 when you meant to hit a 5 on your keyboard or something along those lines. And when you mentioned something on the lines of reducing, you said 43,000 lines of detail. That sounds like 43,000 plus opportunities for a mistake not to happen. So yeah, it just gets more accurate, more secure. And I know we'll talk a little bit about security a little later. But that's fantastic. And I guess also from that, there's going to be, some cost savings as well, which is great for the participants because, it helps protect the benefits, everything like that.
Well, the one thing that I think is, important to note is, and it's part of an overall, project that we did over the last year or so was, ties in with our renovation. But as we renovated, we also cleaned out. We had so many documents and papers and different things that, didn't need to be stored or needed to be, scanned and stored electronically. So we've really reduced our overall footprint as a kind of a side project from our remodel and renovation. So that's really been a worthwhile initiative. And then if it lives electronically, there are certain statutory requirements that we have to store information and documents for, certain periods of time. And storing it electronically versus, storing it in paper, that's a whole different story. And, you have to rent physical space somewhere to store those documents. So, as you indicated, it is an overall reduction in cost, not just labor savings, but I mean, real estate savings, because we don't have to pay to store all these docs either on site or off site. So it's considerable, and I consider it as part of our fiduciary responsibility.
So do you think the goal one day would be 100% paperless, or do you think it's going to always stick around?
I think that it'll be the majority of it will be paperless. Do I think that there's probably going to be some, again, legally there may be some legal requirements to certain documents that you have to maintain. But I think it'll be minimal, Ryan. I really don't think that it'll be considerable. I think it'll be minimal.
Yeah, I think as you noted, we have certain regs in place that mandate paper, but as time continues to progress, it's like anything else, they catch up and they'll update and kind of evolve with the times as well. So,
yeah, and different generations, they interact differently with our fund offices. Now the generations that are retiring, I think some of them are, still dependent on paper, and they want to make a phone call versus send an email or a text. I think those processes will evolve because the generations, they communicate differently, and they conduct business differently.
Before we move on, was there anything else you guys wanted to cover on paperless? Because I think the next topic a lot of folks are going to be interested in, but I wanted to give you a chance to fill in anything on paperless before we move.
The one plug, and it's a shameless plug that I would put in here for paperless, is payroll reporting. We have a big initiative going on out there with the employers for submitting reports electronically versus via paper. So any help that we can get, to complete that process to where we get to 100%, electronic transmission of the monthly payroll reports would be greatly appreciated. I would be remiss if I didn't ask for that.
And I'm assuming if I'm an employer that's reporting over paper and I'm interested in this process, you guys have somebody available ready to go to help them.
Absolutely. In fact, we have more than one person. We've got a team of folks that are willing to get online, and as you know, Ryan, there's different mediums that they can use to and do use, to transmit that. But we're here to help. I mean, that's part of our overall goal, and happy to help. Happy to help.
Well, employers listening, if you're in the minority now, it sounds like, reporting over paper, please reach out to either if you're curious about how to reach out to Darrin's team, you can easily get in touch with them over the NEBF website. You can also reach out to your chapter manager. They'll definitely know how to get in touch with Darrin's team. So let's start keeping that push towards that paperless.
Thank you.
Now the fun one, because Darrin and I worked on this one quite a bit. I still remember when we were putting together the announcement and all of the last minute phone calls and tossing things around to make sure that we communicated this message properly. But it's one of the acronyms that everybody's going to be very interested in, especially since the implementation date is coming up here very soon. But the National Electrical Individual Benefit, the NEIB, as everybody's come to call it. We have this on here to talk about its rollout, talk about what that's going to look like. Obviously, I'm sure everybody has seen, what the benefit is, kind of how it works. But from you guys' perspective, obviously cover whatever it is you want to talk about with it. But some items I'd like you guys to hit is once the chapter and the local have put in the enabling language and everything like that, what's it going to look like? How are they going to report those contributions and handle all of that with your office? So plug that, but I guess we'll start with just from you guys' perspective, what does the NEIB rollout look like?
In a word, extraordinary. I had the privilege of riding along for about a 7 or 8 year period where, I witnessed the conversations taking place between the NEBF trustees, and this was something that did not occur in a vacuum. And I am in awe of what they've done and how they've done this. In fact, when I've been presenting about the NEIB, I say that it's nothing short of brilliant. The way that they have complemented an existing legacy benefit with the NEBF, and essentially bolted on an additional benefit that has the trappings of a defined contribution pension, but the security of a DB pension, defined benefit, like the NEBF. Again, I think it's brilliant. And by putting it under the banner of the NEBF, I think they controlled the cost of setting up a new fund. As you know, that can be considerable. And we used, essentially almost everything, nuts and bolts of the NEBF, the structure of the NEBF, the plan documents. So we just had to modify some language, and then put enabling language that the unions and the employers could use to put into their collective bargaining agreement to get you to the NEIB. And then, oh, by the way, bonus, I think we all know in the outside that they've got an issue sometimes with NEAP when they're in high demand, and that demand is only going to get greater. And it is what it is with NEAP. There are contribution limits, and a lot of times in locals, because of the nature of the work and the demand, those folks that are working in that industry hit those upper limits. And there's an alternative piece of language that the parties can add if they so choose, that once they hit that cap, it can automatically swing over and go into their NEIB account, where it's prohibited from being transmitted into their NEAP accounts. So again, big win for the outside branch, and those folks that, the brothers and sisters that work hard in that branch. But to witness this and witness these conversations, over a period of time, and working with the actuaries and, providing the level of stability that it provides to the NEBF with respect to, regulation, because the funds are essentially commingled. There's obviously different line items because each individual will have an individual balance, which we'll talk about that and talk about, how it's going to be administrated in, in the future. But at the end of the day, to be able to, have that additional benefit that with very little contribution, that over the course of a 20 or 30 year career can essentially double the amount of the NEBF benefit, I don't know how that's not a win. That is a, something that the industry has only gotten better in my 33 years, and I've never seen a change like this. Coupled with the increases to the NEBF legacy benefit, I've never seen a change like this come along in my entire career. So it's awesome. It's awesome to behold, and it was awesome to watch because it was history, Ryan. It was just history.
Yeah. I kind of led into this saying how we had a lot of last minute phone calls and discussions, and don't ever let that make it sound like like Darrin said, this was not a last minute decision. This conversation about the NEIB, about the increase in benefit, it's been going on for years. I know just from my involvement with the NEBF and NEAP and all the other different funds, I was, privy to some of, the discussions and just the amount of work and the time that went in from the trustees, working with the actuaries, running through different scenarios. They definitely put in the time and the effort to be sure that this was a sound decision, and we're seeing that now. So let's talk a little bit about how somebody could use the NEIB. So what's the first thing that they need to do to start accessing or to start utilizing this benefit?
Sure. So first thing that the local parties, this is a completely optional benefit, right? It's not mandated for everyone. So if the local parties, the chapter and the local, decide that they want to participate in the NEIB, all they need to do is get the enabling language, and they need to decide on an amount. There's a minimum contribution that you must make to NEIB, which is 50 cents per hour. Once you meet that threshold, you can either do it as a dollar amount, a set dollar amount, or you can do it as a percentage. We're prepared to accept it either way. Put that language in place in your collective bargaining agreement. What I've seen lately is there's some locals that had placeholders at the bargaining table. They just set out an LOU or an MOU that said once the language became available, they would negotiate it, and they negotiate the contribution at the time. But now the language is there, so I would expect probably, for those who didn't earmark it, I would expect next year as we get into contract time, which you and I both know very well, happens, usually January, February, and March are very busy months for folks to start negotiating, and then it culminates in about May. But they need to insert that language into their collective bargaining agreement. That's the gateway to get to the NEIB, and then they can make those contributions. We have, that I've heard about, I don't know, half dozen? Yeah, about a half dozen locals that I've heard about that have already put the language in their agreement in 1/1/25. They're going to start making contributions for NEIB. So the question is, how are they going to do that, right? How are they going to make those contributions? How is it going to be accounted for? We're prepared for that. Coincidentally, Loughran and the team, before I even got here, they were working on pretty significant database uplift at the NEBF called NEAS, and we're rolling that out shortly after the first of the year. It'll all go on behind the scenes, and it has been going on behind the scenes for quite a few years. But we're going to we've already added the modules in there to accept the NEIB contributions via the monthly payroll reports, the same MPRs that are used. And all it is we're going to add a column for the NEIB contributions, and then those contributions will be accounted for individually, because that's how the benefit is calculated. It's 1.5% based on the total amount contributed over the course of your career, and then off we go. And that's another thing that I point out, the vesting for the NEIB. If you're vested in NEBF, you're already vested in NEIB. There's no new vesting period that's required. So, I would imagine a few years from now, we'll probably start paying out some small NEIB amounts to folks that, were on the tail end of their careers when this started. But the biggest thing that I think is going to help is somewhere out there's a young man or young woman that doesn't even know that they've been accepted into the apprenticeship program, that don't even know that they are going to enter the electrical industry. And I imagine how much it's going to change that young man or that young woman's life over the course of a 20 or 30-year career, and how much more retirement security it's going to provide them that allows them to retire with two things: dignity and respect. And I think that's so important, and I give 100% of that credit to our NEBF trustees for having the vision to do that, and for having the vision to do that for those youngsters that are just getting into our pension plan.
Yeah, no, it's an opportunity like no other. So if I am a new apprentice entering into the industry, and the area that I'm working in, they have the NEIB, and I don't know, let's say my name is John Mandel, and I'm coming in, and my employer is going to be contributing on my behalf. When it comes time to report, they're going to report 3% of my gross payroll for NEBF. Then there'll be another column in the report, whatever was negotiated, cents, dollars per hour, or percentage, it gets contributed on my behalf for the NEIB. Those are commingled in the same fund, but they're tracked essentially separately. So
yes,
awesome.
Yeah, they're accounted for separately, and the way that we envision it is our systems here at the NEBF for the NEIB. When you log into the portal, and say right now, if you want to calculate what your NEBF benefit would be, you can do that. But our goal is, when you log into the portal here, that information, that balance information, it won't be real time, because there's delays that occur within, these are allowable delays. They're within our contracts. But it'll be somewhat real time, where they'll be able to see their NEIB balance. And right now, the way it exists, the benefit is calculated based on 1.5% of that balance. So they'll have an idea for how much money has been contributed by their employer to that NEIB account. So it's it's been some change for us, but because we've had the development going on in the background, it wasn't a paradigm shift. It was just a minor change that we had to make to our programming.
Yeah. I want to dig in
Just
That much.
very exciting.
just a little. Nothing crazy, right?
The only thing I would want to add would be that because the contribution amount that's going to be set by the local parties is completely up to them and will be different each time, it is important that the NEBF get a copy of that agreement so that we know what contribution to expect for each individual. So I just want to.
Unfortunately, both of our parent organizations have things in place to collect said agreements, so we can always help out in instances where you guys may be missing them. I want to dig into something that you had there, and Loughran, I'm probably going to throw that to you here in just a sec, but I wanted to step back just for a bit because Darrin touched on it. He talked about another piece of the language. So like Darrin said, this is an optional benefit. It's optional language. For the more nerdy ones playing along at home, it's optional verbatim language. But there is an option within the optional language that you can negotiate in a separate paragraph to allow essentially overflow contribution into NEIB if you exceed the limits set in NEAP. For those I need to clarify that. For those that aren't familiar with what that means, NEAP itself does not have a limit on contributions. It's a limit set by the IRS. And so if you want to know more about it and you need some help getting to sleep tonight, just Google the IRS 415 limit, and you'll be fast asleep in about 10-15 minutes. But it will definitely explain all of that. So if you're not familiar with it, that'll kind of help you, get up to speed on it. If you are familiar with it, congratulations, you have a lot of work going on. But what I wanted to dig into a little bit, because Darrin hinted at it, but he said Loughran was the one working on it, the NEIS, the database uplift. Can you talk about that a little bit, Loughran?
I sure can, and I would say our IT department is almost, not 24/7, but really working hard to get this done. But it's an uplift of our current system, just to go to a new modern suite of applications to run all of the benefit funds. Basically modernize our platforms, reduce dependencies on software that was becoming antiquated, increase efficiency in processing, and productivity, of course, and just integrate all of our applications. We have a few different systems that we work out of today, but when NEIS goes live, we'll be all in one system. So it's really just an uplift and a modernization that's been being worked on for some time, and it's a collaborative effort between business and IT, and we're very excited because it looks like very early February 2025 we'll be going live.
Awesome. That's going to definitely provide some additional efficiency and sounds like some security for you guys, and it laid the groundwork for what we just discussed. But you've also talked a little bit about the IT team, and we've been kind of going on a common thread since we started going into the discussion topics of things going electronic and moving away from paper. And while that does provide a lot of benefit, a lot of efficiency, and a lot of potential cost savings, nothing comes without risk. And for those of you who do anything online, which if you don't, I'm not even sure how you're listening to this podcast right now, but you're probably very familiar with cybersecurity. So obviously NEBF, NEAP, and FMCP, and everybody, you guys are sitting on a little bit of data, I assume, and a little bit of sensitive data, most likely. Some of it's mine, so I have a vested interest in this. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys are doing to protect that data?
I don't think a day goes by where I don't think about cybersecurity and how we can continue to fortify. It is, in my mind, it's absolute worst case scenario. For me to come into the office and for somebody to say that we've had a data breach. To me, that's a nightmare scenario. And there's been numerous instances, the various funds that we administer where there's been, breaches downstream from us with our vendors, which I know we're going to talk about third-party risk management. But I am very proud of our IT team. I am very proud of our CIO, Bill Oakes. They take this very seriously. In fact, little story, when I first came in, and I don't know, it was within the first couple of weeks, Loughran and Angel Esquadro, she's our managing director of human resources, they set up a series of interviews for me so I could go around and interview all of the leadership and executive team within the fund office. And so I went around and I was talking to folks, and I saved Bill till almost last because I knew that I was going to have extensive conversations with him because it was a very keen area of interest for me. And coming from where I came from at the IBW, it was we were very painfully aware of it there as well, and because we have all our membership records and all of our data and per capita, those kind of things. Those were pension, PBF pension. Those are departments that I oversaw. So it was top of mind for me. So I sat down with Bill, and we had a conversation, and he started out with what are the key areas that that you're the most concerned about. And without hesitation, I told him, I said, Bill, if you really want to know what keeps me awake at night, it's cybersecurity. It's a threat to all of us. And I view the security of your data, and, to me, financial health is the equivalent to physical health. I think if you have financial problems or you have identity theft or those kind of things, that's going to create stress in your life, unlike you've probably, never seen or heard. So I don't want to be the cause of that. So we have a very robust system in place. I'm not going to go into the details of exactly what we do. And in fact, I tell Bill, I really don't want to know the details of what you do because, what you do is what you do. And I think it's important that, I trust and have the ability to trust in, their overall goals and how they execute those goals. They know what my expectations are. And that's right down to the end user. We just had a meeting across the entire family of funds. We had a series of meetings where we met with, all the individual groups by department. And, Bill led those. And he talked about how important security is to us. And we know that each individual user on our system is the equivalent of a door or a window into our system. And, we expressed that to them in that fashion and then told them, what our expectations were. And then, Loughran has a saying that I stole. She says, what you measure is what you manage. And, we measure it, we test it, we drill it, and we do it, not on a predictable basis, but we do it and we watch it very carefully. And we have very high expectations with respect to our cybersecurity, and then we also have very high expectations of all of our vendors. So those are just some of the things. And like I said, I don't want to go into the recipe, but at the end of the day, yes, we take it very seriously, and it's iterated and reiterated on almost a daily basis.
Knowing that some of the things that NECA does to, shore up our cybersecurity, and we're not sitting on as sensitive as information as you guys, but I'm assuming you, without going into all the details, you guys probably conduct like random simulated phishing attacks, things like that, to your employees.
Yes, we check that box frequently.
Yeah, that's like you said, everybody that has a computer in your office, like you said, is a potential door, and it just takes one wrong click, the wrong attachment, something like that, to be opened, and that's it. They just need one little toehold to get in, and it's an everyday occurrence. I remember when we were talking about the most recent breach that we had to deal with the family of funds there, primarily on the healthcare side. While we were sitting in the room having that discussion, I got a notice from a water provider that I had, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, that they had just experienced a breach because they still had my information and now it was exposed. So yeah, it's just an everyday occurrence, and you can't do enough, but you just have to be vigilant. You have to continually, be putting things in place. But the NEBF and the other funds are definitely very susceptible to downstream attacks, because you guys have so many vendors, you have so many different audit firms that you work with. So you have to have systems in place to help with that. And I believe you have something, obviously not coined by you guys, but a third-party risk management process in place. So can you talk a little bit about that, and what you do with that and how that's used to protect the NEBF and the participants?
Sure. We have a very robust third-party risk management program that's administered directly by our CIO. Anyone who does business with us will be sent, documents that basically detail out what our requirements are, and we double check everything. There's an interview that happens between our CIO and whoever the equivalent is, at whomever the organization is, just to make sure that what they purport to have on paper matches what they actually have in their back shop operations. So I think that having that connectivity at the highest level within the organization, I think it provides value. I think with setting our expectations very high, I think that has value. And we only look for high quality firms that, to do business with, that can meet those requirements. And there's things like, SOC audits, and we take a look at what their cyber insurance looks like, and, what their coverages look like. We're very cautious about that. The other thing that, I can point out is, as a result of our robust programs in nature, I've been doing this for about 10 years at this level of administration, and I've never seen a cyber insurance premium not go up year over year. Last year was the first time I saw a cyber insurance policy premium go down, and it was here.
Nice.
So I think that's a good attribute. I think that is proof positive of the robust nature of our program, because obviously, the insurer who's underwriting it, believes in what it is that we're doing. But we're not going to stop, and it's only going to get better. So that's kind of where we're at. And I would say to anybody, if you want to do business with the NEBF or any of our associated funds, you'll need to have some pretty robust programs in place for cybersecurity.
High expectations, which you should definitely have. So,
Yes.
And you're right. You can't stop, because the people doing the attacks, they're not going to stop. That's all they have to do all day, is to try to figure out how to get at your data, how to find that little weak spot. So
Yep.
you have to be vigilant. So yeah, I'm sure we could probably do an entire separate episode just talking about cybersecurity and the different, risks and the different things that you guys do to help protect our participants. But I think the takeaway from this is, if you're a participant in the NEBF, NEAP, any of the family of funds, you can rest easy knowing that you have Darrin's entire team working tirelessly to protect you and protect your information. And as you can see from the response of the most recent one, not only are they working to protect it, but if something does happen, the funds definitely step up to secure your information going forward. So the TLS initiative, you guys had brought this up as something you wanted to talk about a little bit, so
Yeah.
I'll open the floor there.
So transmitting information back and forth from organization to organization, especially the kind of data that we transmit, needs to be encrypted. And so we had other methods and techniques that we used, file sharing and transfer protocols that we used. That we just got to the point to where we said it's kind of clunky, and we're not 100% sure of that this meets the robust nature of our cybersecurity requirements. So we went out and looked for kind of the industry standard, and we landed with this TLS encryption, and so now, and it's end to end, right? So it's from the minute that somebody presses send, that data becomes encrypted, and it's received and it's encrypted. So we try and establish with as many vendors as possible that we're sharing information and data with. We try and establish that TLS encrypted connectivity. So that's been an initiative that's been going on about 6 months. Yeah, about 6 months. I would imagine that over the coming year to maybe year and a half, we'll probably move to get the majority of the vendors that we do business with, that we actually trade data with back and forth. We'll try and get that TLS connection made. So that's just another part of our security program, our data security program, that we feel very strongly about.
And it's probably one of the reasons that goes into your cybersecurity premiums coming down, because you're ensuring that the data you are transmitting is protected as best as it can possibly be. But all of that culminates essentially into the end user, the customer here, which the customer would be the participants. And I feel like you guys have a few initiatives that are in place for your customer service, and also you going back to a term that you borrowed from Loughran, and I'm going to borrow it too. But you can't you manage what you measure, so you have some way of measuring. So can you talk a little bit about what initiatives you have for your customer service experience, and then also how you're measuring that premier service that we've been talking about?
Sure, and I think that probably the best person to talk about this is the person who oversees it, every day. So I think Loughran would probably be best to describe some of the things that we do in customer service across all the departments to deliver that premier participant experience.
Sure. Probably the most outward facing is our call center. And one of the things that Darrin wanted to implement almost immediately was call surveys. And what better way to measure, how we're doing? Of course, all of our calls are recorded with audio and video, so we can see what's on the screen when our representatives are talking to a participant, to make sure, and that's for training too, just to make sure that they're doing what they need to do and they're being efficient. But we implemented call surveys, and at the end of every call, callers are invited to take a brief 3-question survey. It kicks them right into that. If they hang up, they hang up, but if they stay on, they can take that survey. 88% of our surveys as of today score 100%. And we've had about over 5,000 surveys since we implemented this. It's 3 brief questions. Did the customer service representative fully resolve your issue? That's an 89% yes. Was your customer service representative courteous? They've gotten a 96% yes on that one. And then were you satisfied with your customer service interaction? And that's a 93% yes. The neat thing is, if anything scores under 100, immediately the supervisor of that department and the director get an email notification. So in real time, they're going to pull that phone call and listen to it. And if there needs to be coaching or action taken or a follow-up with the participant, they're going to handle that in the moment. So I think that's been the biggest change when it comes to measuring, performance and the premier participant experience, and really implementing that. But truly, customer service, and Darrin says this, if customer service isn't in your heart and in top of your mind, this is not the right place for you, because every single department, from the call center to organizational services, who's handling the mail, to IT, customer service needs to be, truly front of mind. And we speak that every day. We have daily stand-ups every day. Every supervisor of every department speaks to every one of their employees in the morning to kick off their day, and that's customer service is a topic in every department of our organization.
You know, you think about it, Ryan, and I'm second generation. My father was a journeyman wireman for 50 years before he passed, and I think about, you know, he worked in the industry until he was 62, which is, you know, kind of the milestone, and then he retired, and he lived from 62 to 95, and you know, there were three key components to his retirement. The first one was Social Security. The second one was a little bit of a local pension, because back in those days our local pensions weren't as strong as what they are now in a lot of our local unions. And then, you know, number three was the NEBF. And, you know, it was that three-legged stool that supported him for almost as long in retirement as it did, you know, while he was working. And I think that's something that, you know, I bring to work with me every day. And, you know, the contribution that we make, you know, to folks like my dad, their lives and the quality of life and that dignity and that respect that it provided, you know, for over 30 years, it's unprecedented. So I sit here, I well with pride, because I look at, you know, these numbers and, you know, what call center do you know that's got over a 90% satisfaction rating? I mean, it's very few and far between, and that's located right here in the United States. We don't farm it out, you know. It's just, I'm so proud of the folks that answer our phones across the entirety of the funds, because, you know, they're front facing, and, you know, like, you know, Loughran said, it's in their heart. You know, they have it on the front of their mind, the top of their mind, and it's in their heart. They are here for customer service, and I enjoy it. If there's situations that even rise to, you know, to my level that, you know, I've got to have a phone call with a participant, or I enjoy it. I enjoy having those conversations, even if the topic is not probably. I think Loughran and I probably deal with some of the, you know, biggest of the issues, but even at that, you know, I think that even if you do have an issue or there's a question or concern, you still deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. And, you know, that's at the core of what we do. So
those numbers you're talking about too, your satisfaction numbers, that's beyond impressive, because I know from my standpoint, if I'm on the phone and somebody gives me a chance to take a survey, most of our reaction is we just hang up.
yeah,
And the only time that I'm taking a survey is if I'm dissatisfied. So the fact that, and I can't be in the minority in that, I'm sure that's a lot of people that do that. So the fact that you guys have those types of numbers, you're that high, you're showing that, you know, that level of customer service is, I mean, if I didn't see the numbers, I'd have to call it unreal, because it is fantastic that, you know, you are now able to measure and show that there is that premier customer service.
Loughran, what are we averaging now? Calls into the call center a week. Where are we at?
About 700.
Yeah,
A day.
about 700 calls a day into our call center, right? So 5-day work week.
Wow.
I mean, just do the math. That's 3,500 calls a week. And to have that level of satisfaction, you know, I always say it's not bragging unless you've done it. You know, we're doing it. And, you know, anything that we got to drop or an oopsie or anything like that, you know, somebody has a bad call, and it happens. We train to it, right? We take it and we use it as an example, and, you know, our supervisor and the individual, and then, you know, we socialize that so that, you know, we can only get better. Continuous process improvement.
Yeah, I always say there's nothing wrong with making a mistake. The problem is when you make the same mistake twice.
Yep.
So,
Own it.
yeah. Let's kind of put a bow on the participant experience. So we've talked about everything from some of the initiatives from the NEBF standpoint of going more electronic and working through protecting that electronic information, protecting the data of our participants. You guys have gone over how you're measuring the participants' experience and how you're servicing, you know, the electrical industry, handling 700 plus calls a day. How does that all culminate into what NEBF's mission and your visions and your goals. So I believe maybe there's been some either reinforcement or tweaking there. So I'll throw that over to kind of put a bow on the participant experience side.
Yeah, that's back to that those 4 organizational pillars, and one of them is service. So under that pillar of service, we have several bullet points that we espouse to. Number 1, we bring energy to work and everything that we do, and passion. That premier participant experience, those aren't just words. We deliver that premier participant experience every day at every level. We want to make sure that our participants feel seen, heard, and valued. And we want to be excellent. And that word, I'm sure you've seen my email signature with the Lombardi quote that says, if you strive for perfection, you might find excellence along the way. Excellence is a tough word. It's a tough word to try and aspire to be excellent. But we do that. I think all of our employees, all of our managers, we aspire to be excellent in what we do every day. It's just something that I think organizationally we feel strongly about. And that's, training, our base knowledge, our core competencies in what we're doing, and, how we train to meet those needs and the needs of our participants. And then, the last thing is stewardship, which, I come from the IBW, so I understand, stewardship, and we want to be good stewards of our resources and our participants' resources. And we understand that, for every dollar that we receive, there's an ounce of sweat that's sold out there, in the field. And, to me, coming from where I came from, I've bent pipe and pulled wire for a living, so I understand what that's like in the dead of winter in northern Illinois and the heat of the summer. I get that. So I have reverence for those folks that are out there working in the field and the resources that they've provided us. So I want to make sure that everybody within the organization understands and knows that. And it might be kind of a disgusting way to think about it, but that's what I think about. It comes from the sweat, from the members that are doing the work in the field and delivering that high quality product, which we call electrical work.
No, there's a lot of hard work that goes in from the men and women across the country in the electrical industry, and you guys are taking your mission very seriously and seeing that their pensions are protected, their health insurance is managed properly and available to them, their information is safe, and then, like you said, when it comes time, they can retire with dignity and enjoy the fruits of that labor that they put in over the years. Well, I don't know how many different ways I can say of how fantastic of a job you guys are doing, both behind the scenes, both from what the participants can see, from what the trustees experience, from the different folks in our industry that interact with the different funds in different ways. And I always get, such good feedback whenever they have to work with you guys on something or work through an issue. So it's definitely being seen out there, and the data and the information support it. There is one item we have to talk about some of the interactions that go on, and this is one that I get involved with from time to time, working on behalf of the contractors, and it's probably their favorite thing. They really enjoy them, but it's these their payroll audits. I'm sure when they when they get that letter, they're just jumping with joy. I say that all in jest, but obviously it is a necessary process. You guys are required to do these, so. I know there's a lot that goes into it. I know you guys piggyback off of a lot, but I'll kind of kick it over and let you guys talk about that process a little bit, maybe some things you've done to make it a little smoother, a little more efficient, and then, we'll kind of go from there. So I'll kick that off with you guys.
Well, first off, I can't miss an opportunity to compliment the team. It is not a one-person operation, and I think in my role as the executive secretary treasurer, I have responsibilities to the trustees and the participants, but I can't fulfill those responsibilities without an outstanding team behind me. One of them sitting here, Loughran, is outstanding. And we have Bill. We talked about Bill. Angel is our managing director of HR. Tracy's over on the FMCP side, and then all of our team members. I can't say enough. They're outstanding, and I enjoy going to work every day, and where I have the opportunity to interact, I enjoy interacting with them, and making sure that they have the tools, the training, and equipment that they need to do their jobs well. But my hats are off to my executive management team, because in as much as I say things, they have to do the work behind the scenes to deliver. And they all do an outstanding job, and they work hard every day. I can't say enough about them.
Yeah, that's work is definitely there. So with the payroll audits and the audit compliance, Darrin, you hinted at one of the people that has to kind of do the lion's share of that work, or oversee the folks that are doing the lion's share of that work, is sitting next to you there. Loughran, can you talk a little bit about what this process looks like? And I have some more questions, but I think maybe just getting... What's that?
I thought you'd forget about this topic. We wouldn't need it. No, I'm kidding.
No. Hey, it's a skill of the trade. We have to be able to steer discussions when we need to, right? Yeah. It's a skill I'm developing, doing a podcast as well. But from the payroll audit standpoint, so can you talk a little bit about the umbrella of like what that looks like at a structure, and then I'll have a few questions as we get in.
Me too.
Sure, and we can tag team this, but as Darrin said, we have an obligation to audit, right? And we have over 11,000 contributing employers. Yeah. So we try to do as many as we can each year, but we audit in various ways. Sometimes we piggyback with the local funds, which can be very convenient and cost effective for the employers as well. And sometimes we do what we call desk audits, which is where we will have a firm conduct an audit on our behalf. And either way, the goal is just simply to make sure that they're in compliance, and if they're not, to fix it. So the goal is not, to penalize. The goal is not to go after anyone. The goal is just to simply make sure that they're in compliance, and if not, fix it. And over the years, we have streamlined what we actually request, and we've made it a lot easier. The trust allows us to ask for a lot of data, and we've streamlined that into 3 simple things. And what we ask for when we conduct an audit today is just annual W-2s and W-3s, annual 1099s, and then payroll registers to include hours, wages, and job classifications. And that's simply what we need in order to conduct that payroll audit. And we try to do it in a timely manner. If the employer is cooperative with that process, it obviously helps a lot. And then at the close of the audit, I think one of the probably most important steps is, do we call it an exit interview, would you say, almost?
Exit interview with the auditor.
Essentially, the auditor is going to go over those findings with the employer. And the goal of that is, let's fix it now. So is there more information we need that could clear this up, because it looks like there's a deficiency, and sometimes things get resolved that way. But once that exit interview happens, when we feel comfortable with the findings, then those findings will go to the employer. If there is money due, then it goes through a collection process, of course. But if it's no findings, then even better. But I mean, in a nutshell, that's the audit program. Again, not meant to penalize. Most of the time, if there's a discrepancy, it's simply an honest mistake, and that's how we certainly look at it. And again, the goal is to fix it and move forward.
We feel like the majority of it, and I have experience, with this as a business manager. We audited our employers. Our policy at the local union, was once every 5 years. So every employer within the local union got audited once every 5 years. And I understand, how disruptive that can be, to an operation, because, as Loughran mentioned, 11,000 contributing employers. Some of these aren't large, sophisticated operations. Some of these, in fact, almost half of them are, 10 or fewer employees. So I certainly, have experience and reverence for that, because, in that kind of an operation, if you're 10 or fewer, sometimes, you've got, the business owner who's wearing so many hats. They're, lead estimator, project manager, maybe some are trying to, get in some work with the tools. Then, either them or their spouse or, some close relative is running the books. That's tough. It's tough to run a business like that. And I have great reverence for that. And I have good references in my mind for those people. They're good people that are hardworking and running a business in our industry. And I certainly don't want to put any landmines or roadblocks in their way for them to be successful. And the word, penalize. I don't want to penalize anyone that made a simple mistake. Obviously the fund has regulations with respect to, we have, contributions that were made. There's interest that has to be calculated. And that interest that's calculated is done so with a formula that's set forth in the documents. There's not a lot of flexibility there, but liquidated damages, that's a different category. And, we do have some administrative discretion there that we use in most of our audits that are in that realm. They pay within 30 days. They want to remediate it quickly, and they want to correct it and move forward. And one of the biggest things that we get into, I think, more often than not, is misunderstanding of participation agreements. And that's something that I know you and I spend a lot of time, doing education around, making sure that folks understand how the two different PAs work. I know Loughran has, more conversations than we care to count, about participation agreements and the administration thereof. And then there's another person too that's kind of behind the scenes that's also a member of the EMT, and Karen Asani is our controller, and she's the one who oversees that department and works with us, kind of making sure that the numbers are proper and that what we see is accurate before we send anything out to the employer. But can't stress enough that exit interview, that closing conference is so important. And we insist that all of our auditors, if we're using external auditors, we insist that they do that so that they understand, the employer understands exactly what they found in their audit. And any disputes can be resolved at the lowest possible level because, auditors can make mistakes too, or misunderstandings surrounding the language, as you well know. So we can clear that up a lot of times administratively in the field if the proper phone calls are made.
Yeah, I've actually found probably half, if not more, of the issues that make it to me. That's because everybody knows I'm from the NECA side. I interface with the NEBF and NEAP and all that, so they'll come to me with a question, about a payroll audit, and usually whenever I get Darrin involved and we start working through it, better than half the time it's usually just a misunderstanding, and it gets cleared up and moves right along. You brought up the participation agreements. I do want to kind of touch on those just to remind everybody what they are, but before we get into that, outside of the participation agreements, whether it be an audit that you guys have piggybacked on or a desk audit, what would you say would be kind of the most common issue that you see come up?
I think common is contribution amounts. There's a lack of clarity on a local union level about contribution amounts, or you have a transfer of responsibilities in the back shop operation where you had someone who was doing, the books for years that maybe is retired. You got somebody new, they pick it up. They're not familiar with it. I think that's probably what we see more often than not when there's findings. Like I said, there's a small percentage of malicious type contribution issues where folks are borrowing money from their employees' pension and not paying appropriately, and that's a whole different story. That's a whole different set of rules and regulations and attorneys, and that's different. That's ugly.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, this is just somebody who made a simple mistake, and they're just looking to remedy it. And for the most part, that's I think that's what we see.
Yeah.
Mostly just personnel.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I can't remember off the top of my head being involved in anything malicious, having to deal with that. It's always been either a misunderstanding or somebody, made a mistake. That is an interesting one you bring up, and a good piece of information for our employers. When you have those transitions in your accounting department, your HR, payroll, or if you happen to be wearing all of those hats, having a plan in place, making sure it's documented what those individuals do on a daily, monthly, quarterly basis, so that when those responsibilities are transferred to someone else, that there's not a hiccup, there's not something that's missed. Because I can say from the chapter level, from being on national staff and working, at a national level on the funds, that's the issue I saw most often. Was you just had somebody new come in and they didn't realize how the person that's been doing it for 20 years. And, you just get a little, a slight bump in the road, but it's all able to be fixed. And yeah, you guys are very quick at getting that done. Before we move off of this topic, I think it's very important for employers to understand what you brought up. So Darrin or Loughran, whoever wants to go into it, can you please just tell our listeners and viewers what the participation agreements are, what the options are, and then what they need to do to put one in place?
I think Loughran probably has the most daily, weekly conversations about PA. So
Sure.
Yeah.
So in short, a participation agreement allows non-bargain staff to participate in the NEBF or NEAP. And there are two types, and this is where it becomes tricky sometimes. So the first type is an all participation agreement, and that means that the employer must contribute on each and every non-bargain individual, whether they are full-time, part-time, it doesn't matter. If they are paid by that federal identification number, regardless of their location, they have to be paid on if they have an all agreement. That can become tricky for large employers that have multiple locations. The second type of agreement is an alumni participation agreement. And in short, the definition of an alumni is someone who's earned at least one benefit service credit under a collective bargaining agreement. So at least one NEBF benefit service credit was if earned under a collective bargaining agreement, that individual is an alumni. And what we see with audits with an alumni agreement is that there are oftentimes an alumni agreement in place. Someone new will come to work for the employer, and if the employer fails to check with NEBF to say whether or not that person is an alumni, they may have history that the employer isn't even aware of. So again, back to honest mistake, the employer may not be aware that that person counts as an alumni until they get audited. So we always recommend that no matter if you have an alumni participation agreement, that when you hire someone, you check with the NEBF to see if they qualify as an alumni. The other thing I'll mention in terms of customer service is that we will periodically send out what is called a liaison alert. And this would be a little newsletter type flyer on a topic that we find can sometimes cause confusion. And we did one recently about participation agreements, and that is a notification that will go to local unions and NECA chapters, and the ask would be to simply, hey, please share this with anybody that could benefit from it, any of your employers, etc. So just one other kind of thing that we try to do, because when there is turnover, that can be sometimes when things fall through the cracks, as Darrin said. But those are the issues we see with participation agreements.
That's a good thing too that Loughran just brought up, is about the liaison alerts. And I also want to offer too, we have a person, because there's always questions, there's always concerns, administrative concerns. We have a person inside of our office that's our NECA liaison, right? And her name's Tina Heeland, and she's there solely as a resource inside our office, for the chapters to reach out to if they've got, administrative issues and concerns. And any resource that we have available here at the NEBF or NEAP or soon to be NEIB, she has the ability, to access those resources or to escalate any concerns or questions that may come into our office. So definitely, I think in some cases, an underutilized resource out there. So this is something that probably is a good PSA for chapters, is that Tina Heelan, NEAP liaison, you definitely want to make sure that you know that name and know how to connect with her here. She can be of assistance in many matters, many questions.
What we'll do is put Tina's contact information in the description of this episode. So anybody listening, all they got to do, we'll have her email and a phone number, an extension, whatever's needed to get in touch with her. And so anybody listening right now that just heard that, take a look at the description and grab Tina's information. And then I guess the takeaway I'd give to employers listening here, at least about the participation agreements, if you just purchased the business, or you just, you've had a transition in ownership, or you've been in business for a long time and you're just not sure, check and see what you have.
Yeah.
Contact the NEBF. They can tell you if you have a participation agreement in place, because that's the one I've seen before, especially the transition. They transitioned the company to somebody else and they didn't realize they inherited a participation agreement. And like you said, they can have a staff change out or something like that and just not realize they were supposed to be contributing on somebody. So, give that a check. That can probably save you a few dollars, down the line. But moving from there, we got a couple of things to kind of wrap up, and then I'm going to let Darrin and Loughran get back to their day. But you've probably heard throughout this episode, Darrin's talked a little bit about the different offices that support the family of funds. But I think there's some cool things coming about those offices. So do you guys want to talk a little bit about some renovations that are happening?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's been a great exercise over the course of the last year. So our benefits office here in Rockville is probably a little over 20 years old, and it had various upgrades and updates over the years, but it was pretty dated. And so there were some decisions to be made whether or not we were going to remain in this location or stay in this building. And so ultimately what kind of started out as the discussion on whether to stay physically in this building or maybe move to a different place. I think that conversation waned, and the decision was made that we were going to stay here in Rockville. And then once that happened, that kind of opened the door for what are we going to do? So ultimately, we proposed to the Board of Trustees, hey, we would like to renovate and remodel our space into the 21st century operation that we are. So the trustees were generous and offered us a budget in order to renovate and remodel. And so we have. And, some of the technology that we have now available to us in the office is, it's unparalleled. It's what you would see in most modern offices. We have, Zoom rooms and Zoom conference rooms that we can utilize in our daily operations, and it's made us more effective and efficient as an operation. And I think it ultimately allows us to deliver that premier participant experience. And then, the other thing that I think it is helpful is that it makes our employees happy. The environment that you come in, we work in a hybrid operation, so our employees, have a hybrid office. They can work from home. Most employees can work from home a couple days a week, and we can support that. But ultimately, they have an office or a cubicle here as well that they work out of. But we've modernized all that. We've modernized all of our systems and all of our equipment, and I think we've made it a better environment overall. And to see the smiles on the employees' faces when they come into work, and the wows that they made when we came in, made the work, in my mind, it made it all worthwhile. I know, Loughran and the rest of the team, ultimately behind the scenes attended all the meetings and did a lot of the planning, but we're proud of our office. We're proud of our operations, and it represents the professionals that I feel that we are.
The only thing I'll add to that is the heck
Look
out.
out, here it comes.
Our number one goal and priority during this renovation, because Darrin made the decision, we're going to do this in 3 phases.
Yeah.
And the reason for that was we couldn't have any interruption to business operations.
Yeah.
So we moved a portion of our operation to a temporary space right across the courtyard, and quite honestly, we moved our call center over there for the entire time because we didn't want any background noise. We didn't want anything disrupting them. And we did this in 3 phases so that things could continue to move smoothly. And
Yeah.
I think we're both proud to say, we did not have any interruption in business during the renovation. So
Nobody knew.
it was seamless,
Yeah.
to anybody other than those of us that were here. So.
Yeah, I guess the last thing you need is construction sounds on both ends of the phone, right?
Yeah.
Well, on a serious note, I've been through the offices there, and it's fantastic. It looks amazing, and I can see why your employees enjoy coming into work. It's a beautiful office, and it's great too because, just like you said, you have the space. So when the trustees for any of the funds meet, you have fantastic locations for it, and for us, it's if we need to participate virtually, it's as if we're there because you have all the technology in place, and it's great. And for vendors and everybody like that too, they can zoom in without having to send somebody in for every little thing. So that's been fantastic. So
One of my favorite parts about the office now is that we got a lot of artwork from the IBEW, industry artwork, pictures, because they run the photo contest every year, so they were able to provide us some high quality pictures, and it's amazing what some of the members get out there and some of the pictures that they took. So we kind of picked the best of the best, and all throughout the office we have these pictures blown up and framed, and it represents the industry that we represent. And that's one of the things that I've heard from the employees, that they like the art, they like the pictures, because they see what our folks do out there every day. So that's one of my favorite parts about the remodel. There's a lot of good things, but my favorite part was the artwork. I think that turned out very well.
I remember whenever we came up, I think it was for an FMCP meeting, and you were taking quite a few of us on a tour, and I remember David and Kenny, they were commenting on those quite a bit, and they would get hung up just looking at one and discussing what was in the picture. So yeah, those are definitely a hit. So yeah, fantastic. The office looks great. I just want to start off. We talked about quite a bit today. We've covered, just a sliver almost, it seems, of how much is going on with the family of funds, the NEBF, NEAP, NEFP, NEIB, FMCP, all of them. And you guys, you just have all kind of moving parts, so many things going on, and you're executing it so well. So what I'm hoping people take away from this is just the complexity of the operation, what's kind of going on behind the scenes, so that when they do run into things or they have questions, they have a little better understanding of what's happening at your offices there. But we all have our day jobs to get back to, so we're going to start moving into kind of wrapping things up. So Darrin, if you have any closing comments you wanted to make about what's been going on about the NEBF, about the different funds, I'll turn that over to you for a second.
I think one thing that I want to make sure that and especially under the the banner of the operation of the NEBF, we are the function, we are the byproduct of teamwork, right? And the relationship that is between the IBEW and NECA, I think, is unparalleled in the industry. I've seen different evolutions of it over a period of years, and Ryan, of course, from my background at CIR and National Labor Relations, I've seen different things, but I'm extremely proud of the relationship that the IBEW and NECA have at the national level, and it's the byproduct of that relationship to deliver an operation like this and a new benefit like the NEIB. It's that functional relationship that allows things like that to happen. And like I said, I know our trustees individually and personally, and I have nothing but the utmost of respect for them. And we just come to work every day. We just want to make them proud. That's all. We just want to make them proud, and by extension, deliver that service excellence that I know that they so richly want.
I would say from my perspective and from the other trustees that I work with, you and your entire team are succeeding at that. Loughran, I did not want to leave you out. We've covered a lot today. Do you have any closing comments, anything you want to leave for the listeners and the viewers?
Well, I couldn't say it better than Darrin, but I will say that when he started 2 years ago, he made a comment to me and he said, "I don't let grass grow under me." And boy, did I find out quickly what he meant by that. So it's just been an absolute honor to work for him with the energy and passion that he brings every day to deliver what the trustees want and make sure that we're all rowing in the same direction. So,
You know what they say about hard work? It ain't easy.
No, it ain't. Well, I'm actually surprised I've been able to get him to sit here this long.
Yeah.
But I'm incredibly appreciative of you guys taking the time out today. I'm sure everyone listening and watching is going to appreciate the amount of the information and the content that you guys have provided. Obviously, it's all a high-level overview of what's going on. The biggest thing that anybody should take away from this is, if you have any questions, if you run into any issues, Darrin and his entire team are here to help. They will get you to the person that can answer your question, that will resolve your issue. As we've already talked about in this, there will be some contact information down in the description. If you're a contractor and you're experiencing any problems, or you run into an issue or something like that, obviously work with the person at the NEBF you're already communicating with. If you have any other questions or things like that, please reach out to your chapter manager. Your chapter manager can go through the communication lines to talk to us. We can work with Darrin and his team as well. There are multiple ways to get your question answered and to get it to the right person, and that'll definitely happen. So yeah, just remember to do that. Remember to just always ask. Don't be shy, is what I should say. And Darrin, Loughran, thank you for being here today. I appreciate you taking the time. For those of listening and watching, thank you for taking the time to sit in and just hear what's going on over at the NEBF. And as always, if you have any topics or anything you'd like covered on the Labor Thoughts podcast, anything you think that should be discussed, please feel free to reach out. There's more content like this to come in the future. So again, appreciate you guys being here. Appreciate everybody listening from home, and we'll see you on the next one.